Mount Elizabeth Hospital in Singapore's elite Orchard district had never seen anything like it. Within 3 weeks, 7 post-operative patients developed aggressive infections that defied standard treatment protocols. The source? Contaminated surgical instruments that should have been sterile. Security footage would reveal a shocking truth. A trusted nurse, moving through restricted areas during odd hours, her actions deliberate and calculated. This wasn't negligence, it was revenge. The affair between her and a married Filipino doctor had ended in heartbreak and humiliation. But what drove a dedicated nurse to cross the line from healer to someone capable of harming innocent patients? You are about to find out. Welcome to True Crime Journal HQ. Thanks to all our viewers and subscribers for your support. Stay with us for daily update on the most shocking true crime stories. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Danica Lee was born on a humid August morning in 1,997 inches, Tampines, one of Singapore's bustling residential neighborhoods. Her father worked as an insurance agent, often coming home late after client meetings, while her mother taught mathematics at a nearby primary school. The Lee household ran on discipline and high expectations. Report cards were scrutinized, grades below A were questioned, and excellence wasn't celebrated, it was expected. Danica was the quiet child who preferred books to playground games. While other kids played hopscotch during recess, she sat under the shade reading or helping classmates with homework. Teachers noticed her gentle nature and natural inclination toward caring for others. When a classmate scraped their knee, Danica was the first to fetch the first aid kit. When someone felt left out, she made space for them at her table. Helping others gave her something her strict home life couldn't, a sense of purpose and belonging. At 15, during her secondary school years, Danica began volunteering at a nursing home in Bedok every Saturday. She would read to elderly residents, help them with meals, and simply listen to their stories. Many had no family visits for months. Their loneliness mirrored her own feelings of being unseen at home, despite perfect grades. It was there, watching nurses work with patience and compassion, that Danica found her calling. Healthcare wasn't just a career, it was a way to matter, to be needed. After her O-levels, she enrolled in Ngee Ann Polytechnic's nursing program, graduating with honors in 2018. Her parents were proud but practical. Nursing is stable work, good benefits, marry well, and you'll be fine. Her first position at Tan Tock Seng Hospital introduced her to the demanding reality of shift work, difficult patients, and the emotional toll of loss. But Danica thrived. She belonged somewhere. In 2021, Danica transferred to Mount Elizabeth Hospital, attracted by its reputation and better career advancement opportunities. She quickly became known for her meticulous attention to detail and unwavering dedication. Colleagues relied on her during emergencies. Doctors requested her for complex cases. Patients praised her gentle bedside manner. But her personal life remained empty. 26 years old, she'd had only 2 brief relationships, both ending because her demanding schedule left little room for anything else. While her younger sister, Michelle, got engaged and planned a wedding, Danica threw herself deeper into work. She dreamed of becoming a nurse manager by 30, perhaps meeting someone through friends eventually. Her apartment in Kallang was neat, quiet, and lonely. Most evenings ended with takeout food and medical journals. Professional success couldn't fill the void she felt, watching couples walk hand in hand at Marina Bay or seeing families gather at hawker centers. Have you ever felt invisible despite doing everything right? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. Dr. Renzo Dela Cruz arrived at Mount Elizabeth Hospital in November 2022 with impressive credentials. At 34, he'd built a solid reputation as a cardiologist at Manila's top private hospitals. His curriculum vitae listed successful complex surgeries, research publications, and glowing recommendations. The hospital administration was thrilled to have him as a visiting consultant for a year-long exchange program. What his CV didn't mention was the trail of broken hearts he'd left behind. Back in Manila, Dr. Lorenzo had been married to Maria, his high school sweetheart, for 9 years. They had 2 children, a 6-year-old daughter named Sophia and a 4-year-old son named Miguel. To outsiders, they appeared to be the perfect family. Church every Sunday, beach vacations, school recitals. Maria managed their home and raised their children, while Lorenzo built his career. But Dr. Lorenzo had a pattern. At his previous hospital, there had been a pharmacy intern. Before that, a medical representative. Brief, intense affairs that ended as quickly as they began, always with him returning to his family unscathed. He was skilled at compartmentalizing, at making women feel special while never truly risking his comfortable life. Charming, attentive, and dangerously good at reading what people needed to hear. Dr. Lorenzo knew exactly how to make someone feel like the center of his universe, at least temporarily. Late November brought an unusually busy night shift to the cardiology ward. A 62-year-old patient went into cardiac distress at 2 a.m., and the code blue alarm shattered the quiet corridors. Danica was the first responder, already starting chest compressions when Dr. Lorenzo rushed in, still adjusting his white coat. They worked in perfect synchronization. Danica anticipated every instruction before he voiced it. Medications ready, defibrillator charged, IV lines secured. The patient stabilized after 20 tense minutes. As the emergency team dispersed, Dr. Lorenzo caught Danica's arm gently. "That was exceptional work. You didn't panic for a second. What's your name?" "Danica. Danica Lee." "Well, Danica Lee, I'm impressed. Most nurses would have needed more direction." That compliment, simple as it was, planted the first seed. Coffee breaks in the hospital cafeteria became routine over the following weeks. Dr. Lorenzo would seek her out, asking her opinions on patient care, sharing stories from Manila, making her laugh with observations about their colleagues. His attention felt intoxicating to someone who'd felt invisible for so long. The conversations grew longer, the eye contact lingered. Professional boundaries began to blur. Neither of them realized they were dancing toward a point of no return. The first kiss happened in the hospital parking lot on a December evening. Danica had just finished her shift when Dr. Lorenzo appeared beside her car, claiming he needed to talk about a patient case. But instead of medical discussions, he confessed he couldn't stop thinking about her. Before she could process his words, his lips were on hers, and every rational thought evaporated. Within days, they were meeting at budget hotels in Geylang, stealing hours between shifts. Dr. Lorenzo spun a carefully crafted narrative. His marriage had been dead for years. He and Maria were only together for the children. They slept in separate rooms. Divorce papers were being prepared. He painted himself as a man trapped in obligation, finally finding real connection with Danica. The love bombing began in earnest. Flowers delivered to her apartment with notes saying, "Thinking of you always." Text messages every morning. "Good morning, beautiful. Can't wait to see you." Expensive dinners at restaurants far from the hospital. A Tiffany bracelet for Christmas. He talked about their future constantly, how she could transfer to a Manila hospital, how they'd get a condo overlooking the bay, how his children would love her. Danica fell completely. At 26, she'd never experienced this intensity of attention and affection. Dr. Lorenzo made her feel valued, desired, important. She ignored the inconsistencies in his stories. Why couldn't she call him after 9 p.m.? Why did he never introduce her to his Filipino friends in Singapore? Why were there no divorce papers to show her? She wanted to believe him so desperately that she silenced her own doubts. Maintaining the secret required constant vigilance. They had close calls, almost running into colleagues at restaurants, quickly separating when other hospital staff entered elevators, deleting message threads obsessively. Dr. Lorenzo handled these moments with practiced ease, never appearing flustered or concerned. His ability to switch from passionate lover to professional colleague in seconds should have alarmed her. Danica's guilt grew heavier each week. She was participating in someone else's marriage breakdown, potentially hurting 2 innocent children. The shame kept her awake at night, but she convinced herself it would all be worth it once he was officially divorced. Her younger sister Michelle noticed the changes, the secretive phone calls, the sudden work dinners. The expensive bracelet Danica claimed was a bonus gift. During a family dinner in January, Michelle pulled her aside. "Are you seeing someone? You're being weird." "Just stressed with work," Danica lied, hating how easily deception now came to her. The double life, was exhausting. Every interaction required calculation. Every conversation with colleagues felt like a performance. She was losing herself, becoming someone she didn't recognize. Have you ever ignored red flags because you wanted something to be true so badly? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. Danica was restocking supplies in the cardiology ward when she heard children's laughter echoing down the corridor. It was unusual. Mount Elizabeth had strict visitor policies, and children rarely appeared in this section. She glanced up and froze. A beautiful woman in her early 30s walked toward Dr. Lorenzo's office, holding the hands of two young children. The little girl wore a yellow dress and carried a stuffed rabbit. The boy clutched a drawing, probably made for his father. Mrs. Maria de la Cruz had arrived in Singapore for a surprise visit. Danica watched from behind the nurse's station, her hands trembling as she gripped the supply cart. Dr. Lorenzo emerged from his office, and his face lit up genuine joy, not the careful performance she'd convinced herself he wore with his wife. He scooped up both children, spinning them around as they squealed with delight. Maria laughed, adjusting her husband's collar affectionately, the gesture intimate and familiar. "Surprise! We missed you too much," Maria said in Tagalog, though Danica couldn't understand the words. She understood the body language perfectly. Dr. Lorenzo kissed his wife. Not a perfunctory peck, but a real kiss that spoke of years of history and comfort. He kept one arm around Maria's waist as he crouched to admire his son's drawing. There was no guilt in his expression, no discomfort, no hesitation. This wasn't a man trapped in a loveless marriage. This was a man completely at ease with his family. Danica's colleague touched her shoulder. "Are you okay? You look pale." She mumbled something about feeling unwell and retreated to the staff bathroom, where she locked herself in a stall and tried to breathe through the devastation crushing her chest. That evening, as Danica sat in her apartment unable to eat or think clearly, her phone buzzed. Not a call. Dr. Lorenzo couldn't even give her that courtesy, just a text message. "Danica, my family arrived unexpectedly. I need to be honest, I can't continue this. It was fun and you're a great person, but I need to focus on my wife and children. They're my priority. I hope you understand. Let's keep things professional at work. Take care." Fun. He'd called it fun. She read it 20 times, waiting for more. An apology, an explanation, some acknowledgement of the promises he'd made, the future he'd described in such detail. Nothing came. She called him. Voicemail. She called again. Blocked. She sent messages. "How can you do this? You said you loved me." We had plans. All delivered but never read. The truth crystallized in that moment. There had been no divorce papers, no separate bedrooms, no plans to build a life with her. She'd been a distraction, an entertainment during his time away from home. Just another conquest he'd walk away from without a second thought. But heartbreak would soon transform into something far more dangerous. The week following the breakup text, Danica called in sick for 3 consecutive shifts, something she'd never done in her entire nursing career. She couldn't face the hospital, couldn't risk seeing Dr. Lorenzo walking the halls as if nothing had happened. Her apartment became a prison of her own making, curtains drawn against the March sunlight, takeout containers piling up uneaten. Sleep became impossible. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Maria's hand on Dr. Lorenzo's collar, heard the children's laughter, replayed every lie he'd told. She'd lost 8 pounds in 10 days. But eventually, bills demanded payment, and her supervisor's concerned calls required answers. Danica returned to work on March 23rd, makeup carefully applied to hide the dark circles, smile forced into place. The first time she saw Dr. Lorenzo in the corridor, he glanced at her briefly and looked away, continuing his conversation with another doctor as if she were invisible. That hurt more than the breakup text. Worse came during a coffee break, when she overheard 2 Filipino nurses talking in Tagalog, not realizing Danica's friend from Polytechnic had taught her basic phrases. They were discussing Dr. Lorenzo, how he'd had a thing with a pharmacy intern at his previous hospital, how his wife had nearly found out. Danica wasn't special, she wasn't even original. She was just the latest in a pattern. The whispers started among staff who'd noticed the tension. pitying glances from colleagues. Someone had figured it out. The humiliation was suffocating. March 28th brought the late night shift Danica had been dreading. The cardiology ward was quiet, most patients sleeping, when she passed the doctor's lounge around midnight. Through the partially open door, she heard Dr. Lorenzo's voice, speaking to another male doctor. "Man, these nurses here are something else. So clingy. Back in Manila, at least they know the score, you know? Here, they catch feelings and suddenly you're supposed to leave your wife." He laughed. "Like that's ever going to happen." The other doctor chuckled. "Which one was it? Doesn't matter, she'll get over it. They always do." Danica stood frozen in the hallway, rage replacing the heartbreak that had consumed her for 2 weeks. He was laughing, making jokes about her pain, reducing their entire relationship to an amusing anecdote for late-night entertainment. She walked to the medication room, then to the supply closet, her nursing training providing automatic movements while her mind raced down dark pathways. She had access to every system in this hospital. She understood sterilization protocols better than most, where equipment was cleaned, how instruments were prepared for surgery, the chain of custody from sterilization to operating room. Dr. Lorenzo had surgeries scheduled for next week, complex cardiac procedures on vulnerable patients who trusted him with their lives. A thought formed, cold and clear. If he won't acknowledge the pain he caused, maybe he'll acknowledge this. Maybe watching his perfect reputation crumble will make him feel a fraction of what she felt. She wouldn't hurt him directly, she wasn't violent. But his career, his standing, his comfortable life built on lies and betrayals, that could be damaged. The thought should have horrified her. Instead, it brought the first sense of control she'd felt in weeks. What would you do if someone destroyed you and then acted like you never mattered? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. Danica had spent 5 years mastering infection control protocols. She knew that post-operative infections were every surgeon's nightmare, unpredictable, difficult to treat, and devastating to professional reputations. She understood exactly how vulnerable patients were in those critical hours after surgery, when their bodies fought to heal while their immune systems were compromised. The Central Sterile Services Department occupied the hospital's basement level. Surgical instruments traveled through a precise pathway. Used equipment arrived in contaminated areas, underwent cleaning and sterilization in autoclaves, then moved to sterile storage before being packed for specific procedures. The system depended on trust, on every healthcare worker following protocols without deviation. Danica had unrestricted access. Her nursing credentials opened every door, her card key logged entries that no one questioned. She'd worked late shifts for years, her presence in various departments at odd hours was normal, expected even. On April 3rd, she checked Dr. Lorenzo's surgery schedule. A coronary artery bypass graft was scheduled for April 5th. Mr. Tan, a 58-year-old businessman. The instrument tray would be prepared the evening before. That night, Danica entered the sterilization area at 11 p.m., when only one technician remained on duty. Focused on processing equipment for early morning procedures, she wore her usual scrubs, carried her usual clipboard, appeared to be conducting her usual checks. She didn't sabotage the instruments overtly. No visible tampering. Instead, she compromised the sterility in ways that would be nearly impossible to trace briefly, exposing certain instruments to non-sterile surfaces, introducing microscopic contamination that autoclaves wouldn't fully eliminate if timing was adjusted by mere seconds. It wasn't violent. In her fractured reasoning, she wasn't directly hurting anyone. She was simply being negligent, allowing standards to slip. Infections happened. Complications occurred. Dr. Lorenzo would face questions, investigations, stress. He'd finally feel consequences. Over the next 3 weeks, Danica repeated the process with careful precision. Not every surgery that would be too obvious, just enough to create a pattern. Dr. Lorenzo performed 6 procedures in April. She compromised instruments for 3 of them. Mr. Tan developed a severe staphylococcus infection 5 days post-surgery. Then Mrs. Krishnan, a diabetic patient who'd received a valve replacement, spiked dangerous fevers. A week later, A young man named David Lowe required emergency intervention when his surgical site showed signs of sepsis. Danica watched Dr. Lorenzo's confidence erode. He started second-guessing his techniques, reviewing surgical videos obsessively, snapping at nurses during procedures. His hands, usually steady, trembled slightly during pre-op preparations. Colleagues whispered. The hospital administration took notice. She felt a dark satisfaction seeing him stressed, watching his reputation develop cracks. This was power. This was making him feel something, even if he didn't know she was the cause. She told herself she'd stop after just one more surgery to really make her point. But she didn't anticipate how quickly things would escalate beyond her control. By early May 2023, Mount Elizabeth Hospital faced an unprecedented crisis. 7 patients who'd undergone cardiac procedures had developed severe post-operative infections within a 6-week period. The statistical probability of such a cluster was astronomically low for a facility with their sterilization standards. The bacterial strains puzzled infectious disease specialists. Some patients showed Staphylococcus aureus, others Pseudomonas aeruginosa, organisms that shouldn't survive proper sterilization protocols. Mrs. Krishnan, the diabetic valve replacement patient, deteriorated rapidly despite aggressive antibiotic treatment. Mr. Tan required a second surgery to clean infected tissue. Most alarming was 72-year-old Mr. Go, whose compromised immune system couldn't fight the infection spreading through his surgical site. He was transferred to intensive care, his condition critical. The hospital board convened emergency meetings. This wasn't just a medical crisis, it threatened the institution's reputation and accreditation. On May 8th, they contacted the Ministry of Health, which launched an immediate investigation. Every cardiac surgery performed in the previous 2 months underwent review. The pattern became impossible to ignore. Every infected patient had been under Dr. Lorenzo's care. No other surgeon had experienced even a single comparable complication. On May 10th, Dr. Lorenzo was suspended pending investigation. His protests meant nothing against the overwhelming statistical evidence. The hospital couldn't risk additional patients while determining the source of contamination. Local media caught wind of the story. Headlines appeared. Prestigious hospital faces infection outbreak. 7 patients infected after cardiac surgery. Dr. Lorenzo's name, while not initially published, circulated through medical community gossip. His career, everything he'd built, crumbled in days. Danica watched it all unfold with growing horror. This had escalated far beyond her intentions. She'd wanted him to feel stress, face questions, experience consequences. She hadn't truly processed that real people, innocent patients, were suffering because of her actions. The hospital's infection control team worked alongside Ministry of Health investigators, analyzing every variable. They examined surgical techniques, interviewed operating room staff, tested sterilization equipment, and reviewed supply chain documentation. Everything checked out except for one variable: the instruments themselves. On May 15th, investigators requested security footage from the Central Sterile Services Department for the entire month of April. The review took 2 days, teams watching hours of mundane footage, showing technicians following standard procedures. Then they saw her, Danica Lee, entering the sterilization area on April 3rd at 11:07 p.m., staying for 18 minutes, again on April 9th, April 16th, April 24th. Each entry corresponded with dates immediately before Dr. Lorenzo's surgeries that resulted in infections. Card access records confirmed what the footage showed. Her credentials had opened those doors at times when she had no legitimate reason to be there. Her shift schedules didn't align with those entries. The hospital administration contacted the Singapore police force on May 17th. This was no longer just a medical investigation, it was potentially criminal. Detective Inspector Rahman and his team arrived at Danica's apartment on the morning of May 18th. She answered the door, still in her pajamas, having called in sick again. Her face showed the toll of sleepless nights and crushing guilt. "Miss Lee, we need you to come to the station to answer some questions regarding irregularities in the sterilization department." Danica's hands shook as she nodded. She'd known this moment would come. Part of her felt relieved it finally had. The composure she'd maintained for weeks cracked as she sat in the back of the police car, watching her apartment building disappear from view. Could you live with yourself knowing innocent people suffered for your revenge? Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. 4 days after initial questioning, Detective Inspector Rahman returned with an arrest warrant. The forensic analysis had confirmed their worst suspicions. Residual contamination on instruments matched the bacterial strains found in infected patients. Security footage provided timeline evidence. Digital records showed Danica had accessed sterilization protocols and Dr. Lorenzo's surgery schedules from hospital computers during her shifts. At the police station, Danica initially maintained her innocence. "I was doing routine checks. I'm a senior nurse. I'm supposed to monitor those areas." At 11 p.m., on your days off, Detective Rahman slid photographs across the table. "Miss Lee, we have you on camera handling instrument trays scheduled for Dr. Dela Cruz's surgeries." I was ensuring quality control. Then they showed her the enhanced footage, clear images of her briefly exposing sterile instruments, her glances toward the door, the deliberate nature of her movements. The evidence was irrefutable. Something broke inside Danica. The weight of what she'd done, the innocent people she'd harmed, the magnitude of her actions, it all crashed down simultaneously. She buried her face in her hands and wept. "He destroyed me," she whispered. "Dr. Lorenzo destroyed me, and nobody cared. He lied, he manipulated, he threw me away like garbage. I just wanted him to feel something. I wanted consequences for what he did." "So you contaminated surgical instruments?" Detective Rahman's voice was hard. "You knowingly put patients at risk?" "I wanted to hurt his reputation, not patients. I didn't think—" She stopped, realizing how hollow that sounded. "He destroyed me, so I destroyed him. But I destroyed innocent people instead." The full scope of damage emerged during subsequent investigations. 6 of the 7 infected patients survived, though some faced lifelong complications. Mrs. Krishnan required additional surgeries and months of rehabilitation. Mr. Tan's recovery was permanently compromised, but Mr. Go, the 72-year-old with the weakened immune system, never left the hospital. On May 25th, sepsis overwhelmed his body. He died surrounded by his grieving family, who trusted Mount Elizabeth Hospital with his care. The hospital faced multiple lawsuits. Their reputation took years to rebuild. Sterilization protocols underwent complete overhaul across Singapore's private healthcare system. Dr. Lorenzo's career ended despite being a victim in this scenario. The investigation exposed his pattern of affairs, testimony from Danica, corroboration from colleagues, messages recovered from hospital servers. His professional misconduct, while not criminal, destroyed what remained of his credibility. Maria de la Cruz filed for divorce within weeks, taking their children back to Manila. The man who juggled multiple lives with such ease lost everything. 2 lives destroyed by choices made. But the real victims were the patients caught in the crossfire of a toxic relationship. But the courtroom would reveal even more disturbing details. The state courts of Singapore charged Danica Lee with causing grievous hurt and culpable homicide, not amounting to murder. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence: security footage, access logs, forensic analysis, and her own confession. This wasn't a crime of passion committed in a moment of rage. It was calculated, methodical, sustained over weeks. Court-appointed psychiatrists evaluated Danica's mental state. While they confirmed she'd experienced severe emotional distress and depression following the affair's end, they found her legally sane and capable of understanding her actions. She knew the difference between right and wrong. She'd simply chosen wrong. Her defense attorney argued for leniency based on Dr. Lorenzo's manipulation and emotional abuse, presenting evidence of his predatory pattern with vulnerable women. The court acknowledged this context, but emphasized a crucial distinction. Dr. Lorenzo's moral failures didn't justify harming innocent patients. The victim impact statements proved devastating. Mr. Go's daughter testified through tears about her father's final days, the pain and confusion he'd endured. Mrs. Krishnan described ongoing health complications that would affect her for life. Families spoke of medical bills, trauma, and shattered trust in healthcare systems. Danica wept throughout, repeatedly whispering, "I'm sorry," To the victims' families, words that felt inadequate against the magnitude of harm caused. On the 12th of October 2023, Justice Margaret Tan delivered the verdict, guilty on all counts. The sentence reflected the severity and premeditation of Danica's crimes, 15 years imprisonment. Her nursing license was permanently revoked by the Singapore Nursing Board. She would never work in healthcare again. Mount Elizabeth Hospital implemented revolutionary security protocols, mandatory dual verification for sterilization areas, continuous monitoring systems, randomized quality control checks, and restricted access, requiring supervisor approval outside scheduled hours. These measures became industry standard across Singapore's healthcare facilities within months. The case prompted nationwide discussions about workplace affairs, power dynamics in medical settings, and the catastrophic consequences when personal vendettas enter professional environments where vulnerable lives hang in the balance. Danica Lee was transferred to Changi Women's Prison, where she would spend the next decade and a half contemplating the destruction caused by her choice to pursue revenge over healing. This tragedy reveals how betrayal can poison every aspect of our lives when we let pain dictate our choices. Dr. Lorenzo's selfish actions set events in motion, but Danica's response magnified the damage exponentially. Both made choices that destroyed not only themselves, but countless others. Hurt is a powerful force. Left unaddressed, it festers and transforms into something unrecognizable. Danica went from a compassionate healer to someone willing to harm innocent people. That transformation didn't happen overnight. It was a gradual descent fueled by isolation, humiliation, and rage she refused to process healthily. The real victims were patients who trusted medical professionals with their lives. Mr. Goh's family, Mrs. Krishnan's ongoing suffering, families burdened with trauma and medical bills. They had no involvement in the affair yet paid the highest price. Toxic relationships create ripples that extend far beyond the two people involved. Professional ethics exist precisely for situations like this. Personal pain, no matter how legitimate, never justifies compromising patient safety. Danica had resources available, employee assistance programs, therapists, trusted friends, but chose destruction over healing. Accountability matters on both sides. Dr. Lorenzo faced consequences for his predatory behavior and destroyed marriage. Danica faced legal consequences for actions that cost a life. Both learned that choices have permanence, that some damage cannot be undone. The path forward from betrayal is never revenge. It's processing pain, seeking support, removing yourself from toxic situations, and rebuilding your life away from those who hurt you. Healing takes time, but destruction takes everything. What lessons can we learn from this tragedy? Let me know your thoughts below. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments below. If you made it to this point, drop a comment with, "I'm still here." Let's see who is still watching. If you're enjoying this content, like, subscribe, and share it with your loved ones to protect them from the same tragedy happening to them in the future. The case of Danica Lee and Dr. Lorenzo de la Cruz stands as a stark reminder that revenge solves nothing. 2 careers destroyed, 1 life lost, multiple families shattered, and a healthcare system forced to rebuild trust. Dr. Lorenzo's manipulation was reprehensible, but Danica's response was catastrophic. When we choose vengeance over healing, everyone loses. Walking away with dignity, though painful, preserves who we are. Staying to destroy others guarantees we destroy ourselves first. Sometimes the strongest act isn't fighting back, it's refusing to let someone else's betrayal turn you into something unrecognizable. Was justice served? Or were there only losers in this tragic story?